Jasper, what is your worst taxi experience?
Okay, so let me set the scene. It's 2 in the morning, I'm taking a shower.
Taxi.
Hi, can I order a wheelchair cab to the Burnaby Hospital, please?
Yeah, it'll be about 20 minutes.
20 minutes? Thank you. Hi, I called a wheelchair cab to the Burnaby Hospital about an hour ago, and it's still not here.
Yeah, it's gonna be another hour.
Another hour? Hi, I called about a wheelchair accessible cab about 3 hours ago for the Burnaby Hospital.
It's gonna get there when it gets there.
Yeah, I've been waiting here 3 hours. Yes, I would say that's, without a doubt, is my worst cab experience.
Who's this guy? What's your name?
Okay, so what's your name, Jasper?
What's my name, Jasper? Well, hi, my name's Jasper. I was born in Burnaby, British Columbia, and all my life, all I've ever wanted to do is be a filmmaker. I've been stranded getting a taxi on countless occasions, and I thought with the introduction of ride-hailing that it would make the situation better. This issue may seem small, but the implications of it are much bigger. There are barriers that are built into the city that I feel like are kind of almost on like a subconscious level. If you're not a part of the community, if you're not a wheelchair user, you're not thinking about it. I don't think anyone has any ill will towards us. These barriers are set up and we need to start dismantling them. The key barrier that we're going to be discussing is a lack of wheelchair accessibility within the taxi and ride-hailing industry, the difference between the social and medical model of disability. The medical model is very focused on, well, I'm in a wheelchair, so because you are in a wheelchair and because you have cerebral palsy, you are disabled. The more progressive way to look at disability is through the social lens, that there are barriers in society that is making it more difficult for me as a disabled person to live my life to its fullest extent. The first group of people we decided to talk to were fellow members of the disabled community to air their grievances about the taxi and ride-hailing industry, while also sharing some stories and perspective on the issue.
When you call a reservation line, you assume that that means that you're reserving a vehicle. And so at one time when I called a taxi, the day before I had a very important work event in the morning, I said, I'd like to reserve a wheelchair taxi. They said, absolutely, for what time? I let them know. Things were all gravy. But the next day, I called about half an hour before I was expecting them to arrive, just because I had a bad feeling in the pit of my stomach. And I said, hey, just checking in on the status of the accessible vehicle that's coming for me. And they said, well, technically, we can't guarantee that. And I said, what do you mean you can't guarantee that? Well, you reserved a car, but we can only send it once they're available in your area. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, literally, that's why I called a day in advance to reserve that. And they're like, well, that's just not how it works.
We reached out to the most prominent ride-hailing companies currently operating in the city and got no response.
The government could give you incentive, which they recently announced on Feb 1 this year.
On February 1st, 2023, the Passenger Transportation Board announced a subsidy of $3 million to be put towards maintaining pre-existing wheelchair vehicles on the road. Like, it is good news for the subsidy. In 2025, I will surely enjoy it, but I'm living in 2023.
Everything in the taxi industry is regulated by the Passenger Transportation Board. We were negotiating with them for donkey days, long time, right? Because we understood to improve and enhance the accessible service, there has to be something for those guys who are driving those vans.
How do you subsidize those trips for those drivers? And can that be done? Absolutely. We're aware that TransLink is looking at potentially subsidizing trips for able-bodied people for the first mile and last mile. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. The first mile, last mile in any transit system is one of the biggest challenges that face the transportation sector.
Comparing to the regular cab, it is to a cab driver, it's not a beneficial deal to drive a accessible vehicle. Right now, if you buy a Toyota Sienna, to put it on the road, probably it will cost $70,000 or more, because it is not only that you buy a vehicle, you got maybe another $18,000 plus to get a ramp on.
There were talks with TransLink that looked at potentially subsidizing trips for ride-hailing customers so that they could use a ride-hailing solution to get to the Canada Line station in Richmond, and then at the end of their trip in downtown Vancouver, getting to their ultimate destination from the end of the Canada Line. Now, if they're looking at doing that for able-bodied people, why couldn't they do that for people that have access challenges? And I think that's the part of the equation the government hasn't adequately addressed.
There's no law which forces a ride-hailing company driver to honor and serve those people. There's none. Why in the world, when they can make money without spending money, they're not there thinking about the community or society to serve the society?
The issue is that government seems to think that if they retrofit the vehicles, throw the money at this problem, that's going to solve it. And I would argue that that's not going to solve it, because that's only addressing one side of it. Having more vehicles that are accessible, great. But if those drivers ultimately aren't able to make a living wage and support their families, are they going to choose to sacrifice their own families to feel better by serving the people that need it?
When that was brought out, it was seen as a positive, and I suppose you could look at it in a positive, but it doesn't get to the heart of the problem. Certainly from all I'm seeing and from what I hear from members of our community who have accessibility needs, that it hasn't really led to a lot of solutions.
So this is what we've learned so far. There are 2,400 cabs in Metro Vancouver. 457 of those are wheelchair accessible, but only 182 are currently on the road. In a city with a population well over 2 million, there are only 182 accessible cabs to go around. And this is split between various different cab companies. There are 182, there might be only a couple in your area at a given time. We received an email from the Ministry of Transportation where they confirmed that the minimum number of wheelchair cabs on the road for a given company is 1. If we hope to see any serious change to this issue, we need to see more cabs on the road. In Toronto and Montreal, you can get a wheelchair accessible vehicle from the big ride-hailing companies, but you can't get them here. I don't understand how they are allowed to operate in the city when they have the infrastructure in other places. It's just not here.
So we don't need to recreate the wheel, is what I'm interpreting.
Yeah, exactly.
We just need to understand and actually do it.
In an effort to gain as many perspectives as possible, we reached out to a local ride-hailing driver for an interview. But as per their request, they would like to remain anonymous.
At this moment, there is no option to have a full-size wheelchair accessible vehicle, but we do have to take every kind of foldable wheelchair, foldable scooter, foldable walker. There's no vehicles that are built with ramps. I believe it would be amazing to have hands-on training with different types of chairs, scooters, walkers, because if you've never had any experience with it before, it's almost intimidating.
There are existing programs, public transportation, that should have more accessible options. Then in terms of taxi side, there's some, but maybe ways that we can increase that. Then the major amount is if you've got ride sharing, they're allowed to operate here, and these companies are making massive amounts of money. It would seem to be a reasonable thing to say you're making so much profit that there's got to be some way that they are required to increase the amount of accessible options. I think that's something that government has the power to do.
we're kind of in this weird state with the taxi industry where they've lost a lot of drivers either to the COVID pandemic or ride-hailing, their direct competition. So now they are the only accessible option to get a ride late at night if you don't drive. And a lot of disabled people don't have the ability to drive. We came to Victoria today with a scheduled interview with the Ministry of Transportation, but at the last minute, they canceled.
How's the documentary going, man?
I have this feeling like I want to do more for the issue. It feels like there's something stopping this from happening and it doesn't make any sense. I don't know what it is. We've been trying to get to the bottom of it, but like, it just feels like there's something in the way.
What do you mean? What do you feel like you haven't accomplished yet?
I pictured this like big revelation happening or something. We haven't answered that like lingering question of like, what is stopping this from like really happening?
I had tried to get a cab at the Hotel Vancouver, but I couldn't get one over top of everybody else. So I moved to a more quiet location, made some phone calls. I just wanted to go home. It had been hours now. It's been like probably an hour and a half by this point with my first making phone calls. Now I'm calling the North Shore cabs, who they don't come over to get you. They normally just pick you up to go home. And I'm crying. And I'm just like, please, please help me, come and get me. And amazingly, one of them did.
I have a term that I use often, just ask, just listen. So how do you assist somebody with a disability? You actually ask them how they want to be assisted. And then you don't make any assumptions, you actually wait for them to tell you.
You know, I'll be wheeling up a hill, and I'm doing fine, and they push me, and then that's kind of the thing that knocks me off my rhythm.
And then so they always assume, oh, I'm helping you, and I feel that gush of wind, and I got my fingers crossed praying it's somebody I know, and I always turn around and it's a complete stranger.
There was this guy that was doing a jog, and he was like, hey, can I push you for like my workout? And I was like, no, man.
Because your body weight looks to be about right for me.
I know, I was like, oh, I guess I'm a dumbbell.
So I go to grab the back of my chair, and I will like instantly lose my balance, and I try not to swear too much, and they've taken offense. I'm just trying to help, but it's a part of my body. You've just touched my body.
If you were to do that to somebody who was walking and you grabbed their shoulders while they were walking, started steering them, they would think you were assaulting them.
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
People assume they know, and they can make some tragic mistakes.
So if the Ministry of Transportation and the heads of ride-hailing and the taxi industry was right in front of you, what would you guys say to them?
What is your accessibility plan for the Metro Vancouver area?
Does it exist? Yeah.
Invite us to the table to talk about it.
And if you don't have one, let's start the discussion. This has been a long time coming, that there's been discrimination against people with disabilities. You know, it has to stop today.
Hire some folks with disabilities. Bring us into your organizations, because then when you've got folks in the workplace, you don't forget about us.
I think ride-hailing can be sometimes better than cab companies, but they all need empathy training and training around supporting individuals with disabilities, period, across the board.
I feel this responsibility to like represent this community that like I've been a part of.
You think that's a good responsibility to put on yourself?
My responsibility isn't really to represent the whole community. It's to represent myself and then hope that that resonates with the community.
Yeah. What do you think were some like positive examples of like accessibility when we were like growing up?
I mean, there was an elevator in our elementary school.
Yeah.
That was cool. There was not an elevator in our high school.
Which is really?
There was a really slow wheelchair lift. Yeah. They'd let me out of class like 5 minutes early so that I could go down the stairs. They get me on it. I'm about to go down. Then I hear the bell ring, and then the whole hallway's crowded with kids, and they're all trying to get down the stairs, and I'm like, oh no. I'm like on the stairs. I'm like, give me a few minutes, guys. There's like 100 kids behind me. Like, come on, man. So I want to go home.
It's not a positive example.
No. The Passenger Transportation Board is conducting a review of the taxi and ride-hailing industries. I want to tell them how like this has really like impacted my life and a lot of people's lives. Hopefully, getting myself in front of the Passenger Transportation Board to really let them know how I feel with the public behind me, I think that can really move the needle.
How are you feeling, Jasper?
Pretty nervous at this point. I guess I thought I was the one that was going to get the information, but it seems I'm the one giving the information.
Right.
Which,
this is like they're in the research phase, right?
We'll see how it goes. I think I have a good speech. It's all down to the delivery. We were unable to film my conversation with the Legislative Assembly, so we decided to move to City Hall. My name is Jasper Viance. I'm a lifelong BC resident, and as I've grown into my adult years, I depend a lot more on the services of our local taxi companies. But time and time again, I and fellow wheelchair users have been underserved by this essential service. I thought this ongoing accessibility issue would come to an end with the long-awaited introduction of ride-hailing into the city of Vancouver. Why aren't there more wheelchair-accessible cabs on the road to meet the supply and demand of the disabled community? What will it take to get a wheelchair-accessible ride-hailing option in the province?
Those are great questions, Jasper. Well, that's part of our deliberations, to really look at how we address these concerns, dismantle those barriers, and provide the service I think that we all expect across British Columbia. So those are answers we're also undertaking in the course of our hearings.
The question in my mind is, does the current model work? Maybe we need a new model. Maybe it's more than just funding. Where do we get the funding?
Yeah, I think it needs to be kind of dramatically restructured just in terms of how it's built. I think that it's underserving many communities, not just my own. Disability is a community-wide issue that can affect anyone's life at any time. The common consensus of disability is that it's a medical diagnosis that burdens the individual. But the true disability comes from the barriers that are built into society that don't accommodate the individual. This ongoing issue with the lack of wheelchair accessibility within the taxi and ride-hailing industry is a textbook example of barriers built into society negatively impacting those with disabilities. I think I delivered the speech well, but I think in terms of the responses I wanted, there was kind of a failure in communication of exactly what this legislative assembly was. I was under the impression that I would get some answers from some people in power regarding accessible transportation, but I was kind of more giving them information. What is in place is fundamentally not working. We need something new, and we need something different, and we need it in a timely fashion. I see it happening, but I think it's just getting more of like a slow trickle than like a big tidal wave of change. I don't know, it's frustrating. And maybe the ending comes after the movie, the true ending. What do you think is the general public's biggest misconception about being disabled?
Well, that our lives are different.
Or that we don't enjoy our lives?
Yeah, I mean, just there's some simple stuff that there's
quality of life.
no quality of life, that it is somehow different. Disability is a part of the natural human experience. We do not get out of this without some sort of aches and pains.
My wife always says Marco doesn't have a disability until he's presented with a set of stairs. If our society is designed in such a way where every human being or individual in the community is able to do the services and go to the places they live, work, play, and learn in the ways in which we expect, then it doesn't matter about disability, because you should never have to accommodate to your environment. Your environment should accommodate to you, and that goes with anything.
And that's exactly the difference between the medical model of disability and the social model of disability, right?
Yes.
The medical model says you're broken, you need to be fixed, and the social model says it's the environment.
Yes.
So I think when people look at me and my experience with blindness is they think that my life isn't worth living because they can't possibly imagine what they would do. And I didn't either. I was 24 years old when I lost my sight. I went from one world to another, and I didn't know, but I will tell you that there is joy in living, right? And so don't look at me with that lens of pity. 100%. I like my life. In fact, I wouldn't give it up. I wouldn't go back.
Amongst your childhood activities, what would you say is the one you had most fun with?
Going to the pool, for sure.
Cool.
The water was kind of the great, like, level playing field for us all.
Oh, because I could jump?
I mean, low-key, yeah.
Like, I remember one time I was, like, hanging out at your place, and we hung out till, like, 2 in the morning. So, yeah, we were hanging out.
And they had to bring you down the hill.
Yeah, you had to bring me down the hill because there was no taxis. Like,
and that hill's also, like, deadly.
So I was just, like, kind of, like...
Sorry, I'm just chucking this away.
Okay.
Wait, we're not rolling right now, though.
I think, are we?
We are, but it's fine.
I didn't even know that.
If you provide the service, you will get the users. And the argument is always, there aren't enough riders to justify this. But you don't know that because you don't have the service. So you're not providing the service. So how do you know whether there's enough riders or not?
We keep advocating for more to help those residents meet their accessibility needs. But as I say, really, a lot of that has been taken out of the city's control.
The future of the taxi industry is not bright. I should be the one who should be optimistic, not pessimistic. But once I said to you that, I'll give you a candid and honest answer.
If government understands that this is an issue that moves the needle for voters, they need to make those investments early on, and then ultimately this doesn't become an issue.
The way we build a world that creates the disability, really, it's not the person, it's the barriers that we're up against.
I believe everybody has a right to go from A to B, whether they're in a wheelchair or not.
Either they're crazy or I'm crazy to be there.
Collectively, we can break down these barriers and create a truly accessible society. Woo.